you can draw this in Procreate. During this easy Procreate tutorial, I will guide you through all the steps of creating this landscape with a cabin. You will learn all about using clipping mask, alpha lock, layer blending modes, and how you can use the perspective grid. By following this entire video, you will end up with a result you will be proud of. And I'm sure you would like to share it. If you're sharing it on Instagram, then do be sure to tag me in the image, not just in the description, because that way I will be able to find your work and then maybe we will see it in the next video. Just like these amazing results from my friends at Patreon. If you can't get enough of Procreate tutorials, then that's the place you need to go, because there I have more than 100 Procreate tutorials and they range from beginner levels to more advanced levels. For this tutorial, what you need is a canvas that is 4000 by 3000 pixels, and you need the color palette, which is linked in the description. And then if you're ready, let's get started. We'll start by changing the color of our background. Let's go to the two little squares, our layer menu, then we'll tap background color, and then we'll pick this first color in our first row. Then we'll go and grab a brush. We'll go to the calligraphy brushes and grab the script brush. And then for our color, we will grab this one over here. That's the 8th color in the first row. The opacity of your brush should be at 100% so it doesn't get transparent. And for the size, let's go for 20%. And then we'll make a hilly shape. We'll start a bit below the halfway point, so that's about here. And then we'll make a hilly shape all the way to the right. Then we'll make another line underneath, so that'll be about here. It's about, well, like the midpoint, the middle point here. And then we'll make a line all the way to the right, and then we'll drag in the color to fill the shape. Then to fill this area below, we will make a new layer underneath this layer. To do that, we need to go to the layer menu, then we'll tap the plus, and then tap and hold this new layer and drag it underneath that one. Then for our color, we'll pick another color. We will grab this one over here. That's the 9th color in the 3rd row. And then just draw a line behind this one. So you won't see it, but you need to make a line that connects on both sides, and then you can drag in the color right underneath here. Next, we'll create some mountains. We'll do that behind our hill shape. So let's make a layer on top of this one. Let's tap the plus. And then for our color, we will grab this one over here. That's the 7th color in the 1st row. Now let's start about here. And make a mountain-like shape like this. Go to the right. Then over here, make sure you loop to the right so that you get a closed shape. Then we'll make another shape here on the left side. Let's start about here. Go upward and then back down. Create a shape like this, then loop back to the left so that you have a closed shape over there as well. And then you can drag in the color to fill these mountains. Now let's move on and make another layer underneath this one. Let's tap layer 2 again and tap the plus. And then for the color, we will grab this one over here, which is the 6th color in the 1st row. And now let's start about here. Or you know what? Let's start at the edge because we want a closed shape. Then we'll go through here. Make a peak over here and another peak. And then all the way to the right. And make sure that the shape is closed on both sides. And now let's also make a line from right to left like this, so that when we drop in the color, it won't spill out over our brown area over here. So let's drag it in. And then let's make another layer right underneath this one. Let's tap layer 2. And you know what? To make sure that we won't spill any color over our brown area, you could actually also just place this one on top of the mountains. So now let's make another layer. Let's tap the plus and drag it under the other mountains. And then for the color, we will grab this one over here. That's the 5th color in the 1st row. Now let's start on the side. Make a shape like this. Wiggle your way down. Go all the way to the side and then drag in the color. Now let's make a sun. We'll do that on a layer underneath this one. So again, we need to tap the plus and drag this one underneath. And then for our color, we will grab this one over here, second color in the first row. And to create a circle, let's grab a different brush. We'll grab the monoline brush. And the size of the brush doesn't really matter. I have it at 65%. Just make sure that the opacity is at 100%. And then let's just draw a circle. Hold your pen in place and then tap one finger on the screen and hold it there to create a perfectly round circle. And then you can drag in the color. Now we can move it around a little bit by tapping this arrow icon. And then we can just hold your pen. Then we can just hold our pen on the screen, move it around, and place it about here. I want the lower side to be a little bit faded, so let's grab the eraser. And then we'll go to the airbrushing brushes and grab the soft brush. So now with our eraser, we can erase while creating soft edges. Now let's set the opacity of our eraser at 80%. And let's set the size to 20. And now let's go over that lower area very gently and erase that part just a little bit. You can actually go a little bit further until you get a nice fade. Next, let's add some clouds to our background. Let's tap the plus for a new layer on top of our sun. And then for our color, we'll grab this one over here. That's the third color in the first row. And for the brush, let's go back to the script brush. And now let's create a wispy cloud shape here. And it might be a bit hard to see. Just make a simple shape and make that bottom part a little bit straight. So you get the wobbles at the top and you get a bit of a straight part at the bottom. So that you get a nice wispy shape, and then drag in the color. Then we'll switch to another color. We'll grab this one over here, which is the fourth color in the first row. And let's make some more clouds. Covering that sun a little bit. Horizontal at the bottom. Then drag in the color. Then on this side as well, another wispy cloud. Nice and thin. Drag in the color. Then let's make one over here. And you can also make a bit of a shape like this, nice and pointy at the end. And another one over here, just a random cloud shape. Make sure to close the shape and then drag in the color. Then to save layers, once you're happy with your sky and your clouds, what you're going to actually do is merge these two layers. Merge the layer with the sun and the clouds. Because we will be making a lot more layers, and it could be that you run into the limitations of your iPad. So you don't have to merge these layers, but I'm content with what this looks like, so I'm going to merge these. Then let's move on to this mountain. Layer 5, we'll tap the plus for a new layer. And then we'll set this layer to clipping mask. You can see this little arrow, now it's clipped to this mountain. And whatever we draw here, it'll only show up on our mountain, which can be super handy. We'll also play with the layer blending mode. You can tap the N here. Right now it's set to normal, but we are going to scroll up and set it to multiply. Now we can use the color of this layer, of this mountain, and paint on it, and it'll appear darker. Now you can grab this color by tapping your finger on the screen, so you'll get that exact color. And now we are going to create some shapes. And you can see that it appears darker. It's like this color gets multiplied. So we'll make some random shapes. And over here, make sure that you create a closed shape. Then drag in the color. And then to make the effect more subtle, we can go to the layer menu and tap the M here. And then use this opacity slider to make it a bit lighter. Let's go for 60%. Now let's do something similar. Let's tap the plus for a new layer and set this to clipping mask as well. But this time we'll set the layer blending mode to screen. Now you can do the same thing, but this time our color will end up looking lighter. So again, let's make some shapes. Shape over here. Just some random shapes. Pointy shape here. Then drag in the color. Now sometimes you might need to adjust the color drop threshold. You can just drag your pen to the left or right to change that threshold. And then tap continue filling and fill this area as well. And then again, let's go to the layer menu, tap the S in this case, and lower the opacity. Let's set this to 60% as well. And then if you're happy with your shapes, you can merge these layers as well. Let's just merge the mountain layers and then move on to layer 4 here. Let's tap the plus first, set this layer to clipping mask, then set the layer blending mode to multiply. And then let's grab the local color by holding our finger on the screen. And now let's make a shape over here. Nice pointy shape, loop around to close it, drag in the color, and then another shape over here. Loop around to close it, and drag in the color. Now I'd like to make this more subtle by using the eraser. It's still set to the soft brush. And let's go over this middle area to make this a bit faded. Just like this. Then let's make another multiply layer on top. Let's tap the plus, set this to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. And this time for the color, let's grab this one over here, that pinkish color. And then let's make another pointy shape. Loop around to close it. Let's make another shape over here. Loop around to close it, and then drag in the color. Now let's make it a bit more subtle by going to the layer, tapping the M, slide to the left to, let's say, 40%. Then we'll make another layer, so we'll tap the plus, we'll set this layer to clipping mask, and then we'll tap the N and set this one to screen for some lighter parts. But I do want to use that original color again, so let's tap and hold, and then make another random shape here to add some interest to this mountain. Loop around to close it. Perhaps another shape over here. And then drag in the color. Again, let's go to the layer, tap the S, and lower the opacity a little bit to make it more subtle. Let's set it to 60%. And then again, if you're happy with this layer, you can merge these together. You could actually also merge all of these together. But just in case you want to put anything in between these mountains, I would suggest at least keeping them on these separate layers. Now let's move on to layer 3. We'll use the same technique. We'll tap the plus for a new layer, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and set this to multiply. Again, we'll grab the local color, and then let's start here at the top. Make a shape like this, loop around to close it, and drag in the color. Now let's do the same over here. Make a line like this, loop around to close it, and drag in the color. Now let's grab the eraser again and go over the top area to fade this a little bit. Let's do the same over here, making rounded motions. And then let's create another layer, another multiply layer. So we'll tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. Make sure to grab the brush, and then over here, first I'd like to create a shape like this. Loop around to close it, drag in the color, and then grab the eraser again to fade this a bit. Then go back to the brush and let's make another dark part. Loop around to close it and drag in the color. Then on the other side, let's make a shape like this. Loop around to close it and drag in the color. And I also want to add some cracks. Let's make some thin little lines to get this idea of cracks in the mountain. Over here as well. And on this side from the top. Something like this looks fine. Now let's do the screen step. So we'll tap the plus for a new layer, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll down to screen so we can add some lighter parts. Let's start over here. Make a shape like this or something similar. Just use your imagination. Maybe a little bit of a rounded shape here. Then on this side, let's make a nice big one. Loop around to close it. Let's make a little hole here. And another shape over here. Now let's drag in a color, use continue filling at the top, and tap in these areas to fill these as well. Then let's go back to the layer, tap the S, and slide to the left to, well, let's say 55% or 56, whatever. And then once you're happy with these mountains, again, you can merge the layers by pinching them. Now that we have the mountains, let's move on to our hilly shape and add some color variety there. Let's first tap the plus to create a new layer and set that to clipping mask. And then for our color, we'll grab this one over here, 9th color in the first row, to add some darker patches to this hill. So for instance, let's start here, make a pointy shape, just creating random shapes here. So something like this. I'll loop around to close your shape and then drag in the color. I think this looks really nice, so let's pinch these together and then do our little multiply trick again. Let's tap the plus for a new layer, set this layer to clipping mask, tap the N, scroll up to multiply, and let's add some even darker patches. So for instance, let's make a patch over here. Some over here. And a few here. Then drag in the color, use continue filling. And you can also use the color up threshold and fill all these areas. And sometimes you might need to go back to the brush to fix anything if there are still little gaps. What you could also do if you want these to be more pointy is grab the eraser. You can simply tap and hold it to make it switch to the script brush. And then you can go along these pointy parts and make them more pointy. Make them more crisp. I see some little gaps that need to get fixed a little bit. So we can go over with the brush and fix these little holes. And now let's lower the opacity a little bit by going to the layer, tapping the M and sliding to the left to 60%. I actually also want a little darker edge here at the bottom. So let's grab this dark brown here. Let's tap and hold. And let's go over this lower part to get a little bit of an edge here. Then let's move on to the lighter color. So let's make another layer by tapping the plus, setting this to clipping mask, then tapping the N and sliding down to screen. Now let's tap and hold to grab this color again. And let's add a little bit of a lighter part here. Make sure you create a closed shape. Little shape over here. And then drag in the color. And like I said, if you want some pointy parts, you can grab the eraser and go over these areas to make them more pointy. Then let's move further down to this area. But before we do so, we can actually merge these three. Let's pinch them together, then go to layer 2 here and create a new layer on top by tapping the plus. Since this layer is underneath our hill shape, we don't really need to use clipping mask because our paint here won't go over this hill anyway. And for our color, we are going to use this one over here. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. And we are going to create some water. Let's start about here. Make a wavy shape like this. And let's do the same over here. Something like this. Make sure you create a closed shape. And then drag in the color. Then we'll create a new layer on top of this one. We'll tap the plus. Set this layer to clipping mask, so it's clipped to our water. Then we'll grab this next color here, 8th color in the 2nd row, and we'll make another wavy shape. Start here and wave our way to the bottom. Then make sure you create a closed shape like this and drag in the color. Then move on and create a new layer on top of this one. We'll tap the plus. Tap this new layer and set it to clipping mask. And then for the next color, we'll grab the 9th color in the 2nd row over here. And then we'll wave again all the way down, loop around, close the shape, and drag in the color. And then once you're happy with these, you can go to the layer menu and pinch these together. Then let's go back to this layer, layer 2. Let's make another layer on top. Let's tap the plus. And then for the color, let's grab this one over here. That's the 7th color in the 3rd row. And let's pinch out a little bit. And then let's add a little bit of this color over here. Close the shape, drag in the color. Then also over here, a little bit of this warm color, drag in the color. And then let's use the same color to add some rocks here. I want those rocks to also cover our hill, so we need to make sure that the layer we create is on top of our hill layer. And we can also actually merge these two. So now we have a layer with our sun and clouds. We have different layers for our mountains. We have a layer with the brown part here. We have a layer for our water and a layer for our hill. Let's tap that layer with the hill and then tap the plus for a new layer. And then we'll use the same color to create a rock shape here. Just a big rock shape like this. Then drag in the color. And let's make another shape here on the left side. So just a shape like this. It's a pretty big rock. Maybe even bigger. Then drag in the color, and you can make the edges a bit more crisp by grabbing the eraser and going along these edges to get some more pointy parts, just like this. Then let's add some shadow to these rocks by using a multiply layer again. We'll tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. And then let's grab the brush and then let's make a shape like this. Loop around to close it, drag in a color, and let's make a shape over here. Loop around, drag in a color, and then let's lower the opacity a bit. Let's go to the layer menu, tap the M, slide to the left to, well, let's say 35%. And then again, once you're happy, you can just merge these two layers. And then let's also add some plants. Let's tap the plus for a new layer. And then for our color, we'll grab this one. That's the 6th color in the 3rd row. And we will make some really stylized plants here. We'll just create a shape like this, these big leafy shapes right in front of our rock here. So a big shape like this. Then you can drag in the color. And now let's make another one over here. Another big plant shape. Very stylized. There, and then drag in the color. For these plants as well, you can just grab the eraser, go in there, and create some more pointy looking leaves. You can add some interest. Just sculpt them a little bit. There. Then for these plants, I just want to add some light touches. So let's add a screen layer in this case. Let's tap the plus, and then we'll set this layer to clipping mask. Then we'll tap the N and set this to screen. So we can just use the color that we're already using to add some highlights to these plants. For instance, over here. But first we do need to grab our brush, not the eraser. Let's go over here and add a little highlight. And on this side, and shape over here, and a little bit over here. Perhaps a little bit here. Then for this side, we'll add the highlights on the other side because we have the sun in the middle and it's lighting this plant on the other side. Of course, you can take some creative freedom. I think the color is pretty nice. I want to tone it down just a little bit. So let's tap the S, slide to the left to 75%. And now we can actually merge these again. Now let's tap the plus for another layer for some more plants. Let's first grab this color over here. That's the 4th color in the 3rd row. And let's create a plant, another one over here. Some nice pointy leaf shapes. Drag in the color. Then I want to add another plant over here. Let's grab the 5th color in the 3rd row. And let's start here. I just don't want it to cover the other plant that we have just created. So make sure that you don't go over that one. Otherwise, you should put this on another layer. So create a shape like this. Drag in the color. Then let's use the eraser again to create some pointy parts like here. Perhaps over here. For these leaves. And we can also add some little indents here. Looks a bit like grass. Over here as well. Just some of these pointy parts. And then to add some light here, we can add a new layer again. We'll tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll down to screen. For this plant, I would like to use this color, which is a little bit lighter. So let's tap and hold. Let's use that for these parts. Some light on this side. And then for this plant, we'll grab this color. So we get a nice pinkish highlight. So you get something like this. Then let's lower the opacity, maybe just slightly. Let's go to the layer menu, tap the S, slide to the left. Let's go for 75% again. And now we can merge these layers. Next, I want to add another rock. Let's tap the plus and let's add another rock in this area. For the color, let's grab this one over here, which is the 8 color in the third row. And then let's make a shape over here, covering that plant a little bit. Make a closed shape, then drag in the color. And let's use the eraser to create these crisp edges. Then let's make a multiply layer on top of this. Let's tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. And then with the same color, with the brush, of course, you need to grab the brush and then add a shape like this. Be sure to close it and then drag in the color. Let's lower the opacity a little bit by tapping the M. And then let's move this a little bit, tapping the M and then lowering the opacity to, let's go for 35%. And then we can merge these together. Then let's add one more layer here. Let's tap the plus, one more layer for our foreground. And for the color, we will grab this last color in the third row. And now let's zoom out just a little bit. And with this dark color, we'll add some more plants to our foreground. So on this side, let's first start with a bit like grass. Just some random shapes. And then some stems with these rounded shapes on top. A bit like droplet shapes. Then drag in a color and use continue filling and tap these areas. I hope it's not too dark on the dark background. I hope you can see it. If not, let me just tap and hold this check mark so you can see the shape that I have created. And I'll tap and hold it again. And then we'll do something similar on this side. Here I just want some of these like flowers, droplet shaped flowers, little leaf here. Some on this side. And then again, drag in the color. Use continue filling. Tap, 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 tap. And then tap the brush or the check mark here to get out of there. And then let's move on to our background again, because I would like to add some trees before we start working on our house. To work on those trees, we need a new layer. And before we do that, to save layers, we can actually merge these on top of our hill layer. Now we need to go and create a layer that is beneath our hill layer, because I want those trees to be behind the hill. So let's tap this layer, then tap the plus. And then for our color, we will grab this one over here, the 10th color in the first row. And then we will create triangular shapes, and we'll do so by using the selection tool. That's the S shape ribbon. We will set it to freehand and we will turn on color fill. Now we create a selection like this, a triangular selection, and close it. It'll automatically fill with color. And let's do that a couple of times. Let's make various triangular shapes, which will be our trees. And some on this side as well. Make some higher, some a bit lower, some broad, some thin, just a nice variation. Just like this, and then once you have this, you can tap the S ship ribbon to get out of there. Then let's make a new layer on top of this. Let's tap the plus, and then let's set this layer to clipping mask, and then let's set the layer blending mode to multiply. And then for our color, we will grab this one over here, 10th color in the second row. Then we'll grab the selection tool again, but this time we'll set it to rectangle. Then for each of these triangles, we will make the right side darker. We'll start here and then create a selection like this for the right side, and do that for each of these triangles. This one as well. So start at the bottom, then move up. Here as well, and then finally this one. And then tap the S ship ribbon again to get out of there. Then go back to the layer, tap the M, and set the opacity to 50%. Then we'll go to the bottom layer here, tap that layer and turn on alpha lock so we can paint on this layer without going outside of those triangular shapes. Then for our brush, we will go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. And for our color, let's just grab this one, that yellow color here. And then let's go over the tops of these trees to add a little bit of that yellow glow, create a little bit of a gradient on these trees. And now we will repeat these steps on a layer underneath this one. So first tap this one, layer 7, then tap the plus, and let's create more triangles. We'll grab this color again, 10th color in the first row, and then we'll grab the selection tool, set it to freehand, and then make some more of these triangles. Vary the shapes a bit to get a nice variety of trees here. And I don't have to look exactly the same as mine, of course. Then tap the S ship ribbon again. Then we'll do the multiply step. So we'll tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask, tap the N, and scroll up to multiply. And let's, at the same time, let's set this to 50%. Then we'll grab the other color, that's the 10th color in the second row, then grab the selection tool and set it to rectangle. And then again, we'll make selections of the right sides. Just like this. Finally this one. Then go back to that bottom layer, layer 11 in this case, tap it, then use alpha lock. Then we'll grab the soft brush again, and for the color we will pick this yellow, and then again we'll go over the tops and add a little bit of a gradient. Now let's add a few more trees. Before we do so, we can actually merge these trees together as soon as you're happy with them. Then let's tap this layer again, tap the plus. For the color, again, we will grab that 10th color in the first row, and we will grab the selection tool. Set it to freehand, and now we can fill these areas with just a few more of these trees. Fill in some gaps. So you get a nice balance of trees. Maybe one over here. And one here. Then what we'll do is we'll go to the layer, set it to alpha lock, and this time we will use that dark color, that 10th color in the second row to create another type of gradient. We will add a little bit of this dark color to the bottom of these trees for a little bit of variety. Now that we have created our entire landscape, it's time to start creating the little cabin and make use of the perspective grid. To create our house, first we will create a little sketch that we can use as a guide. So let's make a new layer on top of all the others. So let's go to layer 8 here, then let's tap the plus, and then we'll go to the wrench, then to canvas, and then we'll turn on drawing guide. And then you can go to Edit Drawing Guide. And then here at the bottom, you will find Perspective. That's what we need. Now first, let's create one vanishing point. You can just tap on your screen. So you get a nice vanishing point. Now let's move it upward a little bit to decide where our horizon is. Let's place it about here. And then let's make another vanishing point. You'll make it a little bit outside of our canvas, about here. Of course, you can change the thickness of the lines a little bit. I realize that they might be a little bit hard to see on my screen. Let's try and change the color. Something like this. I hope you will be able to see it. Turn on assisted drawing actually for our layer. And then let's tap done. Now all of our lines on this layer will follow our perspective grid. Let's create our sketch. Let's just grab a sketching brush. Let's go to the sketching brushes and let's use the 6B pencil. And now let's sketch out our house. I have the opacity of the brush set to 100% and the size is at 50. And for the color, let's just grab a dark gray. And let's place the left side of our house about here, probably. Then we'll go to the right and back up again. That will be the front of the house and then the side. And you can see that our line, it follows the perspective grid. So that's the side of the house. Then for our roof, we need to make a line going up here from the center to the top of the roof. And we'll do the same here, but we need to make these imaginary lines for the inside of the house. And then from here, we'll also go upward. And then we'll connect these two, and that's the top of the roof. I'll need to make another line. Let's hold our pen in place to detach it from the perspective grid. A line over here and over here as well. We need to hold it in place. And then on this side. These need to attach as well, or at least they need to be at the same height. And we can attach this. So now we have a basic roof and a base for our house. Now let's lower the opacity of this. Let's go to the layer menu, tap the N, and slide to the left to about 40%. Now let's make a new layer underneath this. So first tap layer 8 and then tap the plus. Now, by the way, if you don't have enough layers at this point, you can really just merge mountain layers and pretty much everything here. Or if you want to save those layers but continue working, you can also duplicate your entire project, of course. And then in your duplicate project, you can merge everything, have a separate layer for your sketch and a separate layer on which we will start building our house. Now for the color, let's get started with this one over here. Then we will go to the selection tool, the S shape ribbon, set it to rectangle, and we still have color fill turned on. Now let's make a rectangular shape like this. Now let's zoom in a little bit, go to the move and transform tool and set it to distort. Now we can drag these handles and make this follow our perspective grid and our sketch. So it should look something like this. Then let's tap the arrow and go back to the selection tool and this time set it to freehand. So we can also go to these corners and fill this area. Then we'll tap the S shape ribbon again. And you can see that we have a little thingy here. You can also just go to the eraser and then just go along that area to tidy it up a little bit. Next, let's make a new layer. So let's tap the plus. And this time for the color, let's grab this color over here, third color in the second row. And let's grab the selection tool again, set it to rectangle, and make a rectangular shape over here. Then go to the move and transform tool again, and make this align with our sketch. And by that also with our perspective grid. So it should look something like this. Then tap the arrow again And now let's start creating our roof. First, let's go to the layer menu. Let's tap the plus for a new layer. Then for the color, let's grab this one over here. First color in the third row. Then I'll go to the selection tool again. We still have it set to rectangle with color fill turned on. And then let's make a rectangular shape. And then back to the move and transform tool. Let's make this follow our sketch so that it follows the perspective. I want it to be a little bit higher actually than our sketch because I also want to add a thick part at the front. So let's just keep that in mind and make it a little bit smaller, something like this. Then let's go to the layer menu, slide to the left on this layer and tap duplicate. Then we'll move this underneath the other house layers. Then we'll go to the move and transform tool again, and then we'll flip it vertical. Then move it to the left until it attaches here. And of course it's sticking out a little bit here, but that's okay. We can just tap the arrow, then go to the selection tool, set it to freehand and turn off color fill. And then let's just select this area like this. And then you can either swipe with 3 fingers or go to the layer menu, tap this layer and use clear. Now for that front part, let's go to this layer, tap the plus for a new layer. And then for our brush, we will use a brush that is part of the free treasure chest brush pack. If you don't already have it, do make sure you go to freefromflow.com to get it. It's totally free. And we are going to use the That's a Line brush. Then for the color, we will use this one over here, second color in the third row. The opacity of this brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to 9%. Then let's draw a line like this, and then hold your pen in place to make it snap to a quick shape. And here at the top, you can tap Edit, and push and pull it a little bit until it's nicely aligned. Then let's duplicate this line. Let's go to the layer menu, slide to the left, tap duplicate, then go to the move and transform tool and flip this horizontal. Then move it to the right until it nicely aligns up here. And then tap the arrow again. Then we need another line over here. Let's make a new layer for that. Let's tap the plus. And for the color, let's just grab this one for now. We won't be using it, but this way we can easily see it. So the third color in the third row, let's draw a line like this. Hold your pen in place to make it snap to the quick shape. Go to Edit here in case you need to make it shorter or longer. Let's go for something like this. And make sure you make it pretty small, maybe 8%. And cut off a part here and here so that it nicely attaches. You might need to move it upward a little bit. Let's also place it underneath our roof section here. Under layer 14, go to the move and transform tool. I'll push it up just a little bit. Maybe a little bit to the right. Then we can go to this layer 16, and we can tidy that up a little bit as well. We can grab the eraser and fix this just a little bit. Now what I actually want to do is make this part of the roof stick out a little bit more at the front. So let's move it all. First, let's merge these two layers, these two layer 16s. Then select this. Slide to the right to select this as well, and this, and layer 14 over here. So we have these layers selected. Then we'll go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow, and let's move it a little bit to the left. I think this looks better, having it stick out there. But here we are missing a little part. Let's just remove a part of the house there. So we'll go to this layer, layer 13. Let's tap the layer and turn on drawing assist so our brush or our eraser will always follow the perspective grid. Then grab the eraser And actually, let's set it to the monoline brush so that we don't have any variation in thickness. And then let's just remove a part here. Now what we do miss here is a little bit of roof, a little bit of blue. So let's go to layer 14 here. And let's grab this color over here, the first color in the third row. Let's grab the selection tool, set to freehand with color fill turned on. And now let's just go in here and make a little selection here to fill that area. And then tap the S shape ribbon again. So now we have a nice little house. Let's turn off our sketch. We don't need that anymore, or you can actually just slide to the left and delete it. Now let's go ahead and add some texture. Let's start with layer 14 here. Let's tap the plus on that layer and set that layer to clipping mask. And let's also turn this into a multiply layer. So tap the N, scroll up to multiply. And for our brush, let's go back to the calligraphy brushes and use the script brush again. And for the color, we'll stick with this blue that we have used for the roof. And now let's just go over here. And actually, let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 8%. And let's just make some lines that follow the perspective grid a little bit. So these are like cracks in this wooden roof. I'm using very little pressure. If you are having issues applying this little pressure, then just make your brush a little bit smaller. So just a bit like this. I also want to apply this color over here, but what we can just do is tap and hold here to grab this color. Then we'll go to layer 14, which is this part of the roof, and drag that color in there. Let's also use it for this part. So that's over here on layer 18. Let's drag it on there. And let's also add a dark part to this front of our roof here. Layer 16, let's tap the plus for a new layer and let's set that to clipping mask. And let's set the layer blending mode to multiply. And then let's just use that color that we used for that front part. So let's just tap and hold and then go over here and color that left side. It's a little bit dark, so let's lower the opacity by tapping the M and sliding to the left, let's say to 50%. Now I'm happy with this part of the roof. Let's pinch these together. And also this one actually. We just need to have this on a separate layer since it's behind the front and side of the roof. Now let's start with this part, this front of the roof, the house. Let's turn on alpha lock so we won't be going outside of the shape. And now let's add some color variety. Let's grab this color, for instance, the third color in the second row. And let's again follow our perspective and add some color variation like this. A bit like tiger stripes. Just some bands of color. Let's also grab an even darker color, the fourth color in the second row, for some even darker touches. And then for some light touches, let's grab this color, first color in the second row. And just a few light touches, thin little lines. Until you have something like this. Then let's do the same for the side of the house. So that's layer 13. Let's first turn off drawing assist. And let's give this the same color as the front. So let's go and grab the second color of the second row. Then drag it in. And then let's turn on alpha lock. And then again, let's start with the third color in the second row. Now let's add some dark lines. Try to follow the perspective. And then again, grab the fourth color in the second row for some darker lines. And then for the light lines, we'll grab the first color in the second row. Just a few of these lines. Then to add some shadow to the side, let's make a new layer on top of it. Let's tap the plus and let's set this layer to clipping mask and set the layer blending mode to multiply. And then let's fill this layer with this color over here. Fourth color in the third row, let's just drag it in and it'll only show up on this side. And now let's lower the opacity a little bit. So let's tap the M and slide to 50%. Now let's make a new layer on top of this. Let's tap the plus. For our brush, we will grab the monoline brush. And for the color, let's grab this one over here. Fifth color in the second row. And now we're going to make some circles right here on the edge. The opacity of the brush is at 100% and the size is at 65. And let's start here at the bottom and then move our way up, making these circles slightly touch. Make some more on this side, again starting at the bottom and moving up like this. And of course, this is a very stylized representation of a cabin. But the idea is that these look like logs. Now let's make a multiply layer on top of this layer. So let's go to this layer over here. Let's tap the plus. Then let's set this layer to clipping mask. Then tap the N and scroll up to multiply. Let's grab the local color here. And then let's go along these logs and add a tiny bit of shadow. On this side as well, just a little edge, just like that. And then once you're happy with that, you can actually merge these just like these on top, the red multiply layer with the side, but leave the rest separate for now. Let's make a new layer on top of our front layer. Let's tap the plus. This is where we are going to add the door and windows. For the door and windows, we are going to use a different color. We'll use this one over here, sixth color in the second row. And for the brush, let's stick with the monoline brush. Let's just make it a little bit smaller. Let's set it to 5% in size. And we also want our lines to follow the perspective grid. So we need to go to the layer menu, tap the layer, and turn on drawing assist. Now let's start a little bit to the left of the center and make a line going up like this and another one over here and connect them over here. And don't worry if you went over this area. We are going to erase that later. Let's make a line like this. Then for the windows over here, let's start about here, make a line like this. Add some volume. Let's make a line downward and then back to the left and connect these. So we have like a cross shape. Let's drag in the color. Actually use continue filling, drop the color in, and then switch to the eraser. Let's tap and hold it so that we switch to the monoline brush. And then let's erase this lower part. Then let's go over here. Move downward like this, and on this side as well. Cut off a part of the top to make it more tidy. Cut off a part here to make the top of our door. Then over here, tidy these up. Try to keep them similar in size. And then let's create a similar shape on top. Let's actually duplicate this layer. We'll slide to the left, tap duplicate. Then we'll tap this layer, turn on alpha lock. Then we'll grab a different color. We'll grab this one over here, third color in the third row. Then we'll go back to the layer, tap the layer, and use fill layer. Now we'll go back and use the eraser again. And we will erase the outer parts of these doors and windows. Just the outer parts. This one as well. Also a line over here. Then let's make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's set it to 3% and make a cross shape and a line downward here. Then in this direction and here as well. And then for these windows, also a cross shape. Then to add a little bit of depth, a little bit of shadow, let's, well, stick with alpha lock turned on, but let's change our color. Let's grab this one, the second color in the third row, and now we'll go along these sides and add a tiny little shadow. So make a line on the left side and the top side for all these windows. Left side, top side, and also for these smaller sections. Until you have something that looks like this. So we have a tiny little house with a tiny little door and windows. Now let's add a little bit of shadow here. We can actually merge these layers now. Let's pinch them together. Then make a new layer on top by tapping the plus, and we can actually also merge them with the beams here. Then let's add a new layer by tapping the plus and set this layer to clipping mask and set the layer blending mode to multiply, so we can use this layer to add some shadow. We can just use that color that we use for the house, second color in the second row, and let's add a little shadow here. Pointy shadow going a little bit over our window. So a bit shaped like this. Drag in the color. I think this looks nice. And then we can turn off our perspective grid. You can do so by going to the wrench, then to canvas, and turn off the drawing guide. Now let's finally make a little path towards the water. Let's create a layer on top of our hill layer by tapping the plus here. And for our color, let's grab this one over here. And for the brush, let's use the script brush again. Now let's just zoom in a little bit and create a path of these small rocks. Actually, they are pretty big if you compare them to the house. Give them some random shapes and slowly make them bigger as you move towards the viewer. Change the size, change the shape, vary it up a little bit. And it's okay if it's wonky. We can also add two little ones over here. Now let's drag in a color and then use continue filling. So we can quickly fill all of these. If you want to add some crisper edges, then of course you can grab the eraser, get in there and add some crisp little corners. Tweak your rocks. But I also like the little rounded shapes. So you can vary it a little bit. Then let's add some light here, some lighter color. Let's tap the plus for a new layer, set it to clipping mask again so it'll only show up on our rocks. Then tap the N, scroll down to screen, And with the same color, we are going to add some lighter variation here. We do need the brush. So just some lighter shapes. And I add that lighter color to the top part of these rocks. That's where the light is hitting. That area is lighter. You can add some wiggles. Now you can either color it in by hand or drag in the color once you have a closed shape, of course. Then finally these small ones. And this one. And then for another little touch, a little dark touch, we can also add some shadow by tapping the plus, setting this layer to clipping mask, then tapping the N and setting this to multiply. And now for all of these rocks, I just add a tiny little dark edge right where it's touching the ground. Till you have them all. So something like this. And you can play around with the opacity, of course. For instance, we can make that light layer, that screen layer, we can make that a little bit more transparent. Let's go for 67, for instance. And then once you're happy, again, you can just pinch them together. And let's also pinch them with the hill layer. And then let's make a shadow layer on top of this. Let's tap the plus, set this to clipping mask again, and tap the N and scroll up to multiply. And then for our color, let's grab this one over here for this rock, that nice warm brown. Then let's start here, make a line like this. We can actually use the quick shape or the quick line. Another line over here. Then we need to loop around, make sure that that shape is closed. And then we can drag in the color. Of course, this is way too dark. We can just go to the layer, tap the M, and lower the opacity to, let's say, 30%. And there you have your cabin in the mountains. I hope you've enjoyed following this tutorial. If you want to turn it into a streak, and if you enjoy creating houses, then you might like this tutorial. I would like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for the next tutorial.